Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jenna Redfield, and today we're going to be walking through your burning Notion questions. I asked in my Facebook group, what's the biggest thing that you struggle with when it comes to Notion? And these were the questions and these are the answers. So let's just get to it. Make sure to subscribe for more Notion content as well as marketing and ADHD content. So let's just get to it. So a lot of people ask questions about creating templates. Now, I'm not going to go through creating templates to sell. I have a whole nother video called the 7 steps to selling a template, which really walks through everything. But I think a lot of people are asking this about their own templates. So I want to talk a little bit about my philosophy around templates. Number one, you can start a template from scratch if you want to. There's a blank page in front of you, so you can basically make whatever you want. However, a lot of people find that very intimidating, especially when they're first starting to learn Notion. So what I recommend doing is getting templates to see how it works, but don't rely on them. So there are some free templates out there from sites like Gumroad, or even Notion itself has free templates on the side. If you go to templates in the bottom left corner, if you're on desktop, there are a ton of free options to kind of get you to know what is even possible when it comes to Notion. But I think long term, I think that templates are a crutch when it comes to having a bunch of individual templates that don't talk to each other. I'm very into interactive databases and systems, as you've seen with a lot of my other videos. I learned this specifically from like August Bradley and his PPV method, which if you haven't watched his videos, highly recommend it. That's how I learned Notion, really honestly the best. And I think that if you just get a bunch of free templates, that's not gonna help you in long term. I think you should invest in a system, whether it's mine. I have a $30 life tracker. You could do a different person's. I know there's some really big templates out there. To me, those are the best because they're all interlinked to each other. And that to me is what makes Notion so exciting and important. And if you don't know how to link them, it's already set up for you. Make it easier on yourself, not harder. How much am I willing to pay for a template? I think it depends on how much it's willing to save you time. I have seen other people's templates and have recreated it for myself, and you can do that with mine as well. But it's going to take you some time. So if you'd rather spend $30 to not spend 7 hours making the template, I mean, I guess that's the trade-off, right? That's why people buy templates. That's why people sell them, right? Like it's basically a time saver. That's really what a template is. It saves you a bunch of time of importing and writing things down, setting up all this stuff. So if you're really, really wanting to invest in Notion and make it your platform of choice, which some people are still like debating, that's when you get free templates, is when you're kind of like, is Notion even the right system for me, right? So many people in my Facebook group are like, I've tried other things, like I'm still not sure. I'm like, then don't go all in. Watch YouTube, watch videos to get a sense of where you want to be. Another person asked about templates with clients. This is my personal recommendation, is to make a completely separate account for Notion. I have about 5 Notion accounts, and each is for a different reason. One's a personal, one's one that I use with one specific client. One is just for templates and freebies. And then one is for one of my businesses that is just completely separate. And then the last one is specifically for all of my clients. So I have a client account where I'll set up a page for them, and then I can share that with them and they can join that as like a guest, or they can duplicate it, whatever. I use that specifically for onboarding as well as for client proposals. So if you're managing somebody else's Notion, or you're managing like social media management, I would say get a separate Notion account for that. And there are great templates out there. I'm hoping to come out with like a client template one at some point. I have like a kind of basic one in my business CRM business tracker that I have, but I need to come up with a more robust client one. And I've actually just created one from scratch myself. All right, so question number two is creating to-do lists. This is a big question now because that's what a lot of people use Notion for. How do I best do it? Now, I recommend not doing the check mark, where you can check it off. To me, I'm always about databases. If I can use databases only on Notion, I would. Honestly, and that's kind of what I've realized over the past 2 years using Notion, is I only use databases for the most part. One of the things that has changed recently, if you haven't seen my subtasks video, I highly recommend checking that out. Subtasks have changed the game for me. I have completely changed everything on Notion because of subtasks, and maybe I'll do another follow-up video because literally every single database I have now has subtasks. I will, so like to answer the question about to-do lists, I would say, now they have the status option inside of databases, so you can change the status to whatever you want, and you can filter your database so that it's only showing things that either aren't complete, right? So I personally use the I guess I have the to-do list in my life tracker template, but basically I have things like what's the goal, what's the status, what date is it due by. I put all of that in there, and I've done other videos on this, but for my to-do list specifically, I only use databases. All right, the third question had to do with filtered views. So how do I use filtered views? Well, I will say filtered views have changed for me since this introduction of subtasks. I've actually stopped using a lot of filtered views and have just started using just a way where you can, it basically is like a drop down, so then I can see things almost buried in another layer or nested inside of another layer. I find this to be the way that my brain functions best, and filtered views I still use for some things, but for me, this new subtask feature is just game changing for Notion. I used to have databases that had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of individual pages, and now they can be completely shrunk down when they're in table view based off of whatever I decide to be the parent folder. And let me just say, I've spent literally the last 3 weeks redoing all of my Notion databases because of this new subtask feature. So it's game changing, but with filtered views, basically what you can do is you can choose a specific piece that, whether it's a tag or whether it's a status, whatever it is, you can filter it so that you're only seeing the things that count for that. So for example, you can filter it so you're not seeing a complete task, or you can have a multi-step filter where it's not complete, but it's also high priority. And so I've done that myself on a couple of different things. So basically you can have a multiple step filter where you're either seeing or not seeing a certain thing. And then you can also do this on linked views of databases. So what a linked view of database is it's a view of a specific database, but it's not the original location of it. So say that you have your to-do list, but you want to put that on another page as well. You can create a filtered view where it's only the to-do list for today. Maybe you have a published date of today, but you're not changing the original database at all because it's a filtered view of the original and it's a linked view. That might sound confusing if you don't know much about this, but I might be able to do another video about that because that is kind of like, I have to kind of show it to explain it. So somebody asked about like pages versus databases versus rollups versus relations. This gets into database territory, which is what I love the most, but also I think is probably the most confusing for newbies. So a page is something that can exist within or not within a database. A page is a specific thing that you can move around. You can move a page into a database. A lot of people don't know that. But for me, a page is kind of like the parent, right? The page is the parent page. Sorry, the page is like the parent, and that's where you're getting to. You can have a database within it. You can have multiple databases that are, sort of popped in almost like a widget. I always think of linked databases almost as like a widget that you're embedding inside of Notion. So for me, I try not to have pages that are just off on their own island. I really don't. I try to have every page be part of a bigger database, because then you can also see like all of the linked, relations, that sort of thing. So that's just my opinion. I just try not to have a ton of loose pages because it's also hard to find. If every page is within a bigger database, it's easier for me to know where it is. So that's why I really like my tag and knowledge vault. So if there's a bunch of things I want to learn about, it's always within there somewhere. So for me, my tag knowledge vault is like my everything database, and there's a lot of things within that. So now the difference between rollups and relations, a lot of people struggle with this. So a relation is where you link to another database. So it's a one-to-one link between two different databases. For example, this is a good example. I have a grocery list database, and I relate it over to my meal planning database where I have a list of all of the recipes that I make. So when I link over, I can link over to all the individual ingredients that I need for that recipe. And then it also shows up on the other side and shows what recipes that ingredients goes into. So for me, having my tables and databases be able to talk to each other is really helpful, and honestly one of the biggest things that Notion is known for and also is great for. A lot of other softwares just don't do this type of thing. Now a rollup is different. A rollup is basically a summary of a relation to another database. So you have to have a relation to another database, but if you want to see another data point, so for example, you could see if the items are in stock. So you can roll up and see which items are in stock. You can roll up, it's hard to explain. I've done so many videos on Notion, and yet some of these things are hard to kind of walk through. Basically, a roll-up is a different view of a relation that's not the title. That's basically what a roll-up is. You can see different aspects of the different items in a database in a roll-up. And there's some great videos, and I'll leave them below. I mean, I'm probably going to be linking a lot of videos below because I'm kind of walking through a ton of things here, and there might be things that need a little bit more explanation. So hopefully, also Red Gregory is great at formulas. I'm not the formula girl. A lot of people ask me about formulas. I'm like, I'm not a formula person. I've never used Excel in my life, you guys. I'm a creative person. I'm a video content creator. I don't use a lot of formulas. So even in my course, Notion Foundations, I don't talk a ton about formulas. I talk about a lot of other things and a lot of specifics on how to use Notion, but not a lot on formulas. So there's other creators that are much more techie than me with that kind of stuff. So a lot of people just had questions about databases in general. And you know, the thing that I have to just say about Notion is not something that you can learn overnight. It is very much it's been 2 years for me, and I'm still learning new things about myself and about Notion, about what makes most sense to my brain. This is not a destination, it's a journey. And if you're not willing to go on the journey, there might be other platforms that are better. But for me, as someone who likes to consume a lot of things, as someone who likes to track and put a lot of things in my brain, it's honestly so important for me to use Notion, because I have tried all the other platforms and nothing to me fits my brain like Notion, which is why I started the Facebook group. That's why I didn't start this YouTube channel because of it, but I started making content about Notion because I love it so much and it just fits me. And I think one of the things that I've learned just by running the group is maybe it doesn't fit you. That's okay. It's a trendy thing right now. For me, I try to avoid some of the trends of Notion because I'm like, I see the value and power that it has that a lot of people may not even know that it has. So anyways, that's just a ramble, but I think, you know, databases, I'm gonna do some more videos on that because that, especially with this new subtask feature, has changed the game. Okay, some people talked about planning the structure of Notion. Now, I really spent a lot of time thinking about this, and for me, I really like having databases with about 200 max items is what I've kind of found. It depends on what it is. Like for example, the household products or the grocery items, those are going to be a little bit more than 200. But if it gets more, like for example, I used to have a brain template where I had movies, TV shows, music. It got too much. So for me, I like to have categories of databases, and I think I did a video a couple of weeks ago, my ADHD life tracker one, where I walk through all the different main databases that I have. You should definitely check out that video. It's definitely one of my best ones, and I'm probably gonna have to redo it again now that subtasks are available. But for me, I am very much someone who likes to organize and categorize my life. If you haven't watched any of August Bradley's pillars or any of my pillar content, again, I organize my life in the 13 pillars. It's different than Para, which is Tiago Forte's stuff. I prefer August Bradley's method, and that's just me. It just works better with my brain. And so I've really gone all in on that method, and I don't use a ton of the stuff that he does. I just really got the tags and Knowledge Vault and the pillars. Those are like the two things that really stuck with me from his content, and I've really incorporated that into my own stuff. Some of his other stuff I just don't use. Okay, so this is a big question about getting stuck in the aesthetics of Notion. I would say like at the beginning, I was kind of like stuck in that, but over time I quickly realized I'm like, I want this to be functional, not pretty. And that kind of goes against the grain of a lot of the TikTok and Instagram, like, oh, Notion is so aesthetic. Like, that's the reason why people buy planners, right? A lot of ADHDers buy planners. They're cute. Oh, they're gonna make me all, professional, and they're gonna make me organized. No, you're only organized if you actually have an organizational system that works for you. It's not the way it looks. And for me, I've just never put a lot of energy behind making it pretty because I know that's gonna waste a ton more of my time. And I've already wasted a ton of time on Notion just figuring it out, right? So for me, I'm like, the less amount of time, I just don't add, like, sometimes I don't even add covers. I don't add a lot of pictures into Notion. If looking at things that are pretty makes you feel better, cool. But for me, I'm like, I actually want to use Notion effectively. And so I almost try to avoid that. To me, it's noise. To me, it's just stuff that isn't helpful. And it's kind of like anything in life. You just want to kind of avoid, you don't want to eat potato chips every day, right? Like, you just kind of have to like figure out what you absolutely need versus what would be nice, but like you actually don't really need in your life. So be a little bit more like focused on, okay, if you're actually using Notion, and then again, depends on your goals. If you actually want to use Notion to get good at figuring out your life, then just try to avoid the aesthetics of it. Pretend that it's just like a Word doc, right? That's what I always think, is like, I try to not to add many pictures. I try not to make it as cute. I just try to make it kind of as boring as possible, and that actually makes it more effective for me. But again, it depends on what your goals are. Okay, so a lot of people had questions about Overwhelm. This is not really a plug, but it's kind of a plug. I did come out with my Notion Foundations course a couple months ago to really walk through this part. So many people just said that they just didn't know where to start. And I'm like, well, when I started Notion, I didn't either. I had to watch August Bradley, and he was at kind of a high level. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to get to where he's at. So it was a lot of trial and error. So that's why I came out with Notion Foundations. It's pretty cost effective. Plus you get my life tracker template. So it's really a good deal. And I think that Overwhelm is something that you, especially like ADHDers, is like, you know, sometimes Overwhelm can be good because it makes us more curious. It's like, oh, I want to figure this out. It's a puzzle I need to solve. So that was what Notion was for me. I was like, all right, I kind of went all in. I was like, I just want to figure this system out. And every time I learned something new, I got really excited. So if you're in that phase right now, like I was almost 2 years ago, if you want to spend your time doing it, that's awesome. Stay curious. You know, don't push yourself too hard. When people see me on Notion, this is 2 years of my life using it every day. I remember when I first saw like Marie Poulin's stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, but she was 2, 3, 4 years ahead of me as well. And now, you know, now I'm 2 years in later, and I feel like I'm not at her level, but like I'm at a much better level than I was when I first started. I guess one of the things that I have to say is part of Overwhelm is comparison, and I think that's not good. It's not good at all. Just go at your own pace. I always say this about Notion. It's however you want it to be, right? It's the simplistic version of what you want. You could have it just be a Word doc, a wiki, or you can have it be a multiple layered, database driven, relational database system. That's how I do it. I'm very much someone that likes to have an intense system. Maybe you don't. You have to figure that out for yourself. Okay, so the last one that I get this all the time, which is interesting to me, and I did a post in my Facebook group about it, is a lot of people forget to use it. They forget to open it, they forget to use it. How do they get better at that? All I have to say is, and this is what I talked about in that post, is start cutting out other programs. If you really want to go in on Notion, stop using Google Drive. Stop using Microsoft Word. Stop using Google Docs. Start using, I've recently had to stop using Apple Notes to use Notion, because my Apple Notes was kind of my crutch for just writing quick notes, and then they would get lost forever in the ether. So now I make a note. If I'm on a call or something, I have to mentally be like, all right, what page do I have to go to in Notion to write notes about this call? I have to find that person. So if I have them in my CRM, all right, let's go to, let's say person's name is Michael. Let's find Michael in the CRM, and then I'll put my notes from that Zoom call inside of his, so that way I know where it is, instead of just putting it a random note in Apple Notes, which then months later I'm like, who is this even about? I never even remembered to write the person's name. I just write random crap. So this is my New Year's resolution, is to write everything in Notion. I actually went through, I had 2,000 Apple Notes, you guys, 2,000. And I had to go, this took me like a week. I had to go through and be like, what was this note about? And then like either delete it or put it in Notion. And it took me so long, but finally I did. So now I feel like, oh, so that was really helpful. So for me, using Notion daily, getting it on your phone, getting it on your computer, having it open when you first, open your computer, making sure you have downloaded the app, because there's an app. A lot of people don't know it's free. Anyways, I hope that this was a helpful video. It's kind of a longer talking one that I haven't done before about Notion. If you haven't joined, we have 2 different Facebook groups, ADHD in Notion and Marketing in Notion. I'm hoping to do more with Marketing in Notion this year, just because I'm really getting back into marketing myself, and I really want to talk more about it. I know so much about marketing, and Notion has a really big part of that. I'm also going to be doing some in-person Notion workshops. So if you live in the Minnesota area and you follow me, just make sure to sign up for my email list, and also just let me know that you're local, because I want you to come to our in-person workshop. I'll also be doing probably some Zoom ones as well this year, if you don't live around here. So anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to check out all my links below for all my Notion resources, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!